All right, good evening and welcome back to the Business Roundtable Podcast. I am one of your hosts here, David Carr of Steward Your Business. Thanks so much for joining us. For those of you that are new to the podcast, I work as a coach and consultant in organizational health and leadership of teams. And so I'm excited to get into the topic today. We're going to talk about transition and taking in new roles of management and leadership. And so to help me tackle that discussion tonight, we have a returning guest and one of our regulars, Bil Hatch. Welcome back, Bil.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
Glad to have you. Podcaster extraordinaire. He's got so many podcasts. You just got to go up, Bil, and look up what Bald Spots Productions, right?
Bald Spots Productions. Yep.
Yes.
You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and wherever fine podcasts are offered.
There you go. And he's got some great podcast episodes. So go check them out. And we've got Doc C back. Welcome, Doc C.
How you doing? Glad to be here. It's been a while. I've been absent the past couple of times. Been traveling and working and all that good stuff. But glad to be here.
We're glad to have you here. You're working in all your mergers and acquisitions and transitions. So we're really happy to have you share your insights and history background in this area. So I thought we've talked about roles and responsibilities. We've talked about capacity and management to a certain degree, company culture, your book on winning culture, Doc C, which was a great conversation. And I thought, there's a lot of people that go through a transition phase, and I've been through them, where we're doing a role, oftentimes a technical role. We might be a subject matter expert, and then we're asked to step into some form of leadership role or management role. And so I thought it would be great to talk and get your guys' opinion and insights here to help the business owner or help that person that's just literally in that transition place or looking to maybe transition in the coming months or years here, and help address some of the expectations for themselves, for maybe their team, their upper management. And so maybe I'll start with you, Doc C, tonight, and we'll come back to you, Bil, for both of your inputs here. But what are some of the challenges we should anticipate or be aware of? Because sometimes it sounds all great. I'm getting promoted. I'm going to this new role or coming into this new company. But what from you, Doc? What would you say are some of the challenges you need to be prepared to face?
Well, I've always even helped people when they get into these situations. I always tell them that there's really the expectations not only from leadership and the people even above you, but even the people below you. There's really some certain qualities that you really need to bring to the table. One is, and this is a biggie, integrity. You really have to, even if you think it's something that you don't like, you have to do what's best for the organization, and you have to be honest about it. So I always tell them, integrity, you have to be goal driven.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to, along with the goals, you're going to have to be able to motivate your team, your people. And you got to have innovation and collaboration. I mean, those, if you have those qualities, you will be a great leader. But, integrity's the top of my list. That's a biggie. The rest, you can actually learn, but you really you got that position probably because the people above you saw that you had some integrity and the ability to do all those other things, motivate and innovate, all those things. So that's what I always look at, trying to keep it minimal when you get out of the gate, because it's going to be a learning curve for anybody. But if you can just have those things written on your wall or your iPad or somewhere just to remember, I think you'll be moving forward quickly.
Yeah, integrity. That's a great word. I think as you said that, it made me think, Doc C, is when you're in that new role too, you're not going to have all the answers. It's new. So living in
Yeah.
integrity means you have to be able to say, I don't know, or I'm not clear, or, but I'll find the answer, right? Instead of putting airs that you got it all together, you've got it figured all out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really, you hit it right there, and because we don't know, and why try to come up with an answer? Uh,
Hmm.
do some research, find some facts, and see what you can come up with. But don't, just say you don't know.
Hmm.
I'll get back to you on it. Whatever.
Hmm.
Absolutely, I agree.
Well, how about you, Bill? I mean, you've talked before we got on the air tonight. You mentioned you've talked about this in the past, and you've been through these challenges of transition. So, what's kind of your history in dealing with this?
Well, I have to concur with the good doctor. Integrity is integral. Uh, but I would also throw in adaptability. Um,
Hmm.
you may be in a position where you had specific relationships with the people around you,
Hmm.
and if you get promoted up above them, well, those relationships are all going to change.
Yeah.
Especially friends and family, those kinds of relationships, which you can find yourself in when a family business decides to expand. They may be bringing in people from outside, and so you need to learn to adapt to those situations. But yeah, it's really important to change, to be ready for change, because yeah, that's
You,
just the way it is.
Bill, can I ask you the question? Well, you made a
Sure.
statement that I think I hadn't thought about for a while, but a really
Mhm.
important statement, especially when you're all at the same level and then you're promoted up or you're set in a new role.
Yeah.
That dynamic of power and positioning, you're right, is very real. And some people are
Yeah.
supportive of it, and some people are not so supportive of it. You
Right.
know, like
Right.
who is this guy?
The the people you're now above may have expectations that they'll get preferential treatment.
Right?
Um, and you have to stand strong against those kinds of feelings. Um, you can't give someone the better seat, the better office, just because you used to like them. You have to understand that you're in a position now where you have to make the decisions that are best for the company and the people in the company.
Yeah, Doxy, you were gonna say something there?
Yeah, because yeah, Bill hit on that. Have you, either one of you, or even the people that are listening to this podcast, read the 48 Laws of Power?
Oh, I know. I've heard of it. I've never actually read it.
It's actually, and you know what? I'm gonna, give me a second, and I
Yeah,
will
please.
I will look it up so I can have
Yeah.
find the author real quick. And the reason why I mentioned that 48 Laws of Power is that, gosh, I don't know what it is, but is because it talks about what Bill was mentioning, is that when you get into that power position, you have to be ready for all of these attacks, uh, because of the emotion, the envy, the jealousy, all of those things that come about. And so that, it's a great book. I just can't find the
Oh, is
darn.
it is it I looked it up. Robert Greene?
Yeah, there you go. There it
Oh, yeah.
is.
Yep.
Absolutely, Robert Greene. That's a great. And some of you
Yep.
that are listening to
So,
this podcast, you might disagree with some of those laws, but they are actually real. They are actually real. So it's a pretty good read, and it's something that if you put into a leadership role, is to, especially in a power position, you need to read that to be aware of those things. For
yeah, that's
sure.
great. I just looked it up on Amazon. It's got like over 76,000 reviews. It's like almost
Yeah,
a 4.5-star book. So
yeah,
we're all about providing value and references here. So hey guys, look, you just got a nugget from Doc C, who's read a lot of books and written books. There's one you guys can go put on your reading list. I'll put it on mine. But I think that's a really important. We could probably just have an episode on this alone, just navigating the power side of things and what does that look like.
Yeah, that alone is a good podcast right there.
Yeah. Yeah, we always come up with new topics, so we're gonna come back.
Yeah.
You guys have to come back and listen to this one.
Yeah.
So, so we're addressing this idea. There's be aware. I'm hearing you both say this: is be aware of these dynamics up and down. Your upper management has expectations of you, and those below you, as you serve in a leadership role, have expectations and understanding. And so this can be really challenging, like you guys both said, especially if you have friends and colleagues, and you're like, "Oh, are you going to give me preferential treatment?" No, it's we've got to look at the best interest of the company, like you said, Bill. So, Bill, coming back to you here for a minute, then what would you say is as okay? I'm coming in there, and Doxy, you talked a little bit about this, but now you're in a new role, and we talked a little bit about you and I, Bill, about like capacity and how we could get more production, right? So what are the things that you need to be aware of? I've done certain roles and responsibilities, and now I'm stepping into this new one, and in more in a management role, not just technical, right? Maybe work, but management. What are the things that you've seen that we need to be considering?
Well, your own capacities are really what you need to be aware of first. What are you capable of doing? What do you already know, and what do you not know? Of course, there are going to be things that you don't know, especially moving into a higher position. But most people have seen what managers do, and have some idea of what's going to be required of them. So yeah, you need to be self-aware and put yourself into the new position and be ready to learn.
Be teachable, be humble. You don't know it all.
Well, you know what, and I'll piggyback off what Bill was saying is that the other thing that you need to really, because each of us, by the time you're in a leadership role, you probably have a good idea of your strengths and weaknesses. So you want to make sure that you put bring a team around you that supports your weaknesses, for sure, and you put them like they're your best friends, because that's exactly what's going to happen is people will identify your weaknesses and they'll attack those weaknesses, and they might not even do this in front of you. They'll do it behind you. But my point is really simple: is that you just rally some troops that kind of support all your weaknesses, and you continue, if you are in this leadership role, to hone in on your strengths, because weaknesses can be overcome by those that have that as your strengths. So that would be my point if anybody was actually jumping into a leadership role.
Well, I want to follow up on that, Doxy, because I'll give you a personal experience I had where I was a senior biologist, and then I started to take on managing these projects and staff. In talking about weaknesses, or I would say related to that, was delegating and finding people that you can delegate to, because I felt under this trap personally where I felt like I had to do it all, and I was really struggling to do it all, and I didn't realize I should be asking for help or looking for people. I just thought, oh, I'm just supposed to do this, I'm just supposed to figure this out. So maybe talk a little bit about that too, about Doxy, about when you're in a management or in a leadership position, how crucial it is that you, like you said, find the right people. And how would you say if you found the right person too, Doxy, how do you make sure you're actually delegating effectively to that person? Okay, you found them, like what would success look like to you?
Well, it's it's kind of like if you're the quarterback. I always use this analogy: you're quarterback of a football team, and you want the best offensive line to protect you, and really that's exactly what you're doing in a leadership role. Is you are finding people around you to protect you, but at the same time you're actually moving forward down the field to score a touchdown, to score a win. And in order to do that, you cannot, um, what's the word I'm looking for? You need to always be supportive of your front line, even
Mhm.
if they're going to make mistakes. We're all going to make mistakes. So
Right.
we still focus on what our job is at that particular time, whatever the task is. And you do that daily, and you support them. Say, hey, give them roles, give them what you do not want to do. Well, it's not so much, and you hit it, you know, David, is when you're in a leadership role, you think that you have to do everything.
Yep.
Because you just increased your salary 50% or 80%, whatever it is, and now I need to show everybody that I'm worth those dollars.
Yep.
But in reality, you just do the opposite. You actually engage everybody. You bring everybody along, and you just oversee all their duties, because you cannot do everything, and that's for sure, as you probably found
Oh
out.
yeah. Yep.
So and this is what I teach even, small business owners who are actually trying to increase their, business from $1 million to 5 million or even 10 million. I go, you have to find a way to get rid of the hub and spoke. And what that means, of course, is you're right there in the middle, and everything is coming towards you, the distributors, sales, everything. You can't do that. You just have to find people and trust that they're going to do that, and they're going to make mistakes. Period.
Yeah.
They will. You just hope that it's not a costly one. But at the
Mhm.
same time, you just have to trust that they're going to do the right thing. And so
Mhm.
that's how you build any company or any team, winning team, is to
Yeah.
trust them, to
You
trust them.
you got to trust, and I've seen a lot of folks struggle with that, Doxy,
Yeah.
struggling with trusting the team. They got in this position and they're like, oh, I don't rely on. But what I hear you saying is that's the only way you're going to be able to grow. Otherwise, you're just going to stay at a certain level. That you're the limiter, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's true. Have you ever read the book No Man's Land? It kind of illustrates that, and that is because if you're a small business owner, everybody thinks that you have a culture. Well, no, your culture is actually you.
Mm,
And the only way to grow is to get outside of your comfort zone, and trust that people can actually make some decisions and build a better team or better company, for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, maybe, and Bill, maybe you can speak to this too, because I think building on this, that you identifying, like you said, Doxy, your strengths and your weaknesses, and being okay with that, recognizing that I don't have to do anything, right? Get your ego out of the way, and like understand, lean into what you do best, right, Bill? And
Mhm.
so just speaking to that again, Bill, of like we talked a little bit about this in previous episodes about managing our time and how to like focus on some things, but like how do we continue to build our credibility as a leader, as a manager with that group, that those individuals, Bill, as we're trying to delegate. And I've seen people abuse that too, where they're just like pushing everything off, and it's like, okay, we got to figure out a good balance here. You're responsible for certain
Right.
things that you're really good at, but then there's other things that you do need to let loose. So thoughts, feedback on
Yeah.
those ideas?
Well, I really think that one of the most important things you can do is learn your own limits, and how to delegate appropriately. Um, most modern leaders that have done something incredible are surrounded by people who are smarter than they are in a certain way.
Mhm.
So there's a little bit of humility there. I mean, Elon Musk doesn't know how to build spaceships or electric cars, but he knew how to get in there, and he knew to surround himself with people who knew those things.
Right.
Going way back, the perhaps the world's greatest conqueror, Temujin, more commonly known by his title Genghis Khan, even had a military strategist, Subutai, who without him, Genghis Khan would not have been the conqueror he was. He would have been limited in his ability to take over so much of what he took over. So getting the right people, and putting them in positions where their strengths shine. Because so much of what people do is about, oh, you got to work on your weaknesses. It's like, well, why not work on your strengths? We've talked about that before too.
Yep.
Make your strengths stronger and utilize the strengths of those around you. And you will of course find people to fill in for those weaknesses. You just need to put together a team of people who have strengths you don't. Not even just about the strengths you don't have. It's also about strengths you do have, because like you said, you are the limiter. You are the limiter in your own success. So get people who have strengths you do, and then you can spend time on other things, and getting the team together, getting them put into positions where they feel useful, and feel that you rely on them, because people feel good when that happens. That makes the team feel good. So even if you can do something, get somebody else who can do it too.
Right.
And trust them to do the job.
I think that's a great point, and something I experienced in a small company, and Doxy, you probably address this too. But when you're in a small company, like you said, you're in those growth phase, Doxy, of like 1 to 5 million, let's just say. I've been in that place with a company. Your role and responsibility changes about every 6 to 12 months. It's been my experience.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, and Bill touched on something. I'm sure you guys are familiar with Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich book.
Yep.
And he, of course, interviewed Andrew Carnegie, that actually produced that book. But, he even asked Andrew Carnegie, and Andrew Carnegie says, I know nothing about steel, nothing. And he was the richest man in the world by manufacturing this. And he says, I know nothing about it, but I know a lot about people. And I know a lot about strengths and weaknesses regarding people. And that's really what it's all about, is finding a way to move people from point A to point B, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, that gets into, so we've talked a bit about kind of some management skills, and we may come back to these things, but I think really what you're pointing to, Doxy, is really, how do you show up as a truly a leader, and not just a manager? We need both, being you're managing things, but leading people. And how do you adapt your particular leadership style so that you have impact, like what you said, Doxy, that motivation. So you've obviously learned your strengths and abilities, but now you're stepping into this role, and there's different team dynamics. So how do you assess that as a leader in adapting to that group or folks that you're called to lead and step in there, Doxy?
Can you clarify that question?
Yeah. So you have a certain style or a way of being. We've talked about this in the past with our leadership voices, right? And so when you're coming into a new group, there's new dynamics there, right? So you don't know necessarily all the players and
Right.
how they show up, how do they, what again, what motivates them is different for different people, right?
Right.
So how do you as a leader come in and assess that team, and what do you look at? What are you looking at as coming as a leader? You're in a new role, and what are you looking at your team? How do you assess what's maybe tools or resources or things that you should be considering when you're like, okay, I'm going to lead this team, but I need to know some of the dynamics here of the players, if you will.
Right. And the very first thing that I do, and I even recommend to people that actually are going to be in leadership roles, is to listen. Listen to the people as they talk, as they communicate. You have those that speak from emotion. You have those that speak using their rational thought, their facts and figures. You have so many different variables, or shall we say emotions, that people talk about. And if you listen, you can actually see and hear, I'd rather, what's going on within the organization, within that team, and you just simply ask questions, and listen, and be absolutely specific. And that it goes back to that integrity. You just listen to what they say, and by the way, respond to what they actually say, and not tell your opinion as a leader, but you want to find out who's the movers, who's the shakers, and you also want to find out the strengths and weaknesses of each player. And the only way to do that is to observe, to listen to everything that's going on, everything. And now that's what you want to do probably for the first 6 months in that position, is to listen to everything, every meeting you go to, everything you see. That would be my advice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, listen, ask questions. That's a great observation, Doxy. How about you, Bill? What coming into a new position here in a leadership role, and you don't, and in this case, let's just say you don't know all the players, or you're unaware, of that. Besides, in addition to listening and asking these questions, like Doxy said, what are other proactive things that you can do?
Well, to kind of piggyback on what Doxy said, you need to actually be listening when someone's speaking. Like, as he was speaking, I wrote down a note about what I wanted to talk about, and then I started listening to him again. You can't be thinking about what you're about to say while you're listening to what somebody else is saying. So you need to get used to those silences while you're thinking of what to say.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody else speaks, you listen to them, then you think about what it is you're going to say in response. And those silences can be uncomfortable, but we have to get used to them because, well, like we've said before, discomfort is where growth happens. So be uncomfortable in the silence, think about what you're going to say, and then say it. Don't think about it while they're speaking. That's rude. You might as well be talking over them. For all that matters. But yeah, I've often said before, keep your ear to the ground and your mouth shut. Listen to what others are saying, and listen to what's not being said. That can also be quite important, because people don't always want to talk to management about what's wrong. They may be hesitant to do so because they're afraid that they're going to get in trouble for criticizing, if you will, or to be seen as criticizing, even if they're not being overly critical. And so that goes again back to another episode where we talked about company culture.
Yes.
You need to create a culture where talking is a good thing, and where it's appreciated and rewarded. In fact, rewards. Rewarding people for saying what's really going on.
And that can be hard, right, Bill?
Yeah.
I mean,
because again, we're back to humility again. You don't have all the answers, and you better get used to that.
And here's another situation I asked for both of you guys your opinion on. You're a leader, you're stepping up into a new management role, and sometimes it's great, it's being promoted within. Sometimes there's a major problem in the organization. There's real pain, there's a gap there. Like, we got to fill this hole, we got to address this. And so you're stepping into this, situation, again, not knowing all the dynamics that are going on there. And I think what you said, Doxy, about asking questions, looking around, and kind of being situationally aware, emotionally aware, and being prepared that you may have people coming to talk to you about issues that you are inheriting, if you will. Right? You're like, I don't know about the history here. I'm stepping into this. So what could you guys say? I'll come to you, maybe Doxy first here. When you're coming into situations, and this could be leadership management, this could be a project, right? You've stepped in, you're taking over a project. You don't know all the details, and now fix it, right? You're gonna like transition, and you fix it. And you're like, what do you do? What do you tell the person where it's like, you don't have all the pieces of the puzzle, and you're coming in there and you're kind of like, you're actually, unfortunately, you're put in a bad situation because your steps behind, and now you're being expected to lead her up or something to kind of solve this problem, be the problem solver, make this go away. What would you say, Doc C, to somebody that's stepping into a situation like that?
Yeah, what you, in my experience, what you usually get from people, male or female, it doesn't matter, is emotion. And they just start rattling off all different types of problems, issues, you name it. It just, and then they go, oh, and then department A over here, they don't, and then department. So then I stop them, and I ask them for clarification. And when you do that, and you ask for, and you can even say, I want some definitions. I want you to define what it is that you are trying to tell me. And I don't say it emotionally, but I need to understand what it is that you're trying to tell me, because you're bouncing all over the place. And that's one of the things, if you can slow people down when it comes to these types of problems as a leader, you are asking them to clarify what it is that because sometimes they don't even know what it is that they're just rattling off. They're just emotion. There's emotion behind it. So you have to slow down, ask for clarification, get some definitions, and then you can start moving forward, analyzing the issues, the problems. But we are emotional beings. And so the very first thing that we have to understand is that slow down, let's figure this out and go from there, period. I mean, that's how I approach different issues, that when I go in and I deal with evaluations and company culture and how to grow businesses, I ask these questions. But I ask these questions, hey, I understand what you're saying to a degree, but I need you to clarify, because I really don't, and maybe others don't understand where you're coming from. That's how I approach it.
Yeah, no, I think that's some great insights there, and yeah, they may not know. And Bill, what's your been experience this, where maybe you've stepped into a new role, you transition to a new role as a leader or point of contact, and people start to come with you with all their problems, or like, hey, you're the new guy. Let me come and just dump on you here. You know?
Right. Actually, it reminded me of an old joke about three envelopes. The new IT manager gets promoted up, and in his desk he finds three envelopes, each one marked, when the first thing goes wrong, open this one, second one, and so on. And he opens, and something goes wrong, and he opens up the first envelope, and it says, blame the last guy who was here in your position. And so he does, and everything gets smoothed over. And then something else goes wrong, and he opens up the second envelope, and it says, blame the operating system. And so he does, and everything gets smoothed over. And then he opens up the third. Then the third thing goes wrong, and he opens up the envelope. And it says, write out 3 envelopes and resign. But yeah, it can be really difficult moving into a position that often has issues, or as my old mentor used to say, opportunities for improvement. Yep. And we have to be ready for those. And there can be a lot of trouble ahead. It's not all smooth sailing, and but we need to have plans at the ready for when something does go wrong, and we have to know who to listen to, and who we can trust to tell us the things that are really wrong with the boots on the ground. Where the problems really matter. So having a plan, and certainly not the 3 envelope plan, but having a plan at the ready for when, we have a plan written out for how we're going to get in the building if it catches fire. and this is the same kind of thing. When you have a problem going on, you need to have a plan and know how to navigate it.
Well, I think that's a great observation, and a couple things that you spurred in my mind, Bill. You talked about that. I did this actually interviewing for a job one time for a high level position, and they didn't have everything mapped out, which is okay to a certain degree, but I recognize, how do I win in this position? If when I'm transitioning and taking on this new role, how do I win? What's the wins here? And sometimes it's not always clear. So like to your point, Bill, like you have to have some plan, you have to have some markers so we're going in the right direction. But if you leave it too wide open, your higher ups, at least I feel like they may get frustrated with you because you're not fulfilling, but then they're not clear on this. So again, when you're transitioning into this role, if you don't have a plan or some kind of way of going, you're with intention, you're warning, you might get into trouble. And I would say for any of you listening here, the reason why we have this podcast is that you have resources where you can call Bill or Doc C or myself, send us a message and say, hey guys, I'm calling the bat phone. I'm calling out because I may have some trouble here, and talk with us, and we can find out and help you, see if we can help you where your position. All of us have different backgrounds here, and that's why we have this podcast, is to give you, a little insight, a little help, but we're here for more. And I think to your point, Bill, is like, who can you talk to? Sometimes you can't talk to people in the organization, unfortunately, right? That's why, Doc C, you come into businesses, right? You're helping them with transition all the time.
Absolutely. What's interesting, what we're talking about here is, I was just thinking that, sometimes you get into positions and it's really a losing battle. You can't fix the problem. The culture in the organization is so dysfunctional that not one person's going to do it. And so that's also something you got to look at as a leader, because if people are behind you to as a quarterback, like the analogy I use, quarterback, if they're going to make me look good as a quarterback, then we're going to be all right. But man, if an organization behind all of that, the owners of the football team, speaking of an NFL team or even a college team, if they don't support the leaders, there's a problem.
Yeah.
And we've all been there. I mean, I've been there before too. And a leader might stand up and say, okay, we're going to go from point A to point B, and tomorrow it doesn't happen. So you just have to be aware of things, and you have to, surround yourself with people that like-minded people that want success. Bottom line.
Yep.
In my opinion.
Yeah, no, you're right, Doc C, is that but there is that place you have to face the reality sometimes that you don't have that. You're in a losing proposition. And be real with it. There's some things in there, but I encourage people to ask questions about this. And when you're stepping into a new role or responsibility, there's some transition there. I remember I was with a company for many years, and first I was a project manager, then I started to manage in some teams, and then it was like some individuals, and then it was group. And I was struggling as I transitioned into different elements within the company as to, well, how much time do I need to be spending doing these things? Because I could spend a lot of time in a lot of things. And what I found was it wasn't clear. And so that caused some conflicts and some challenges there. I thought, hey, the priorities were one thing, and somebody else thought the priorities were something else. And there was not a meeting of the minds. It wasn't understanding. And so, like you said, you're trying to lead something. And if you don't have the support there, because it's like, well, we don't really think that's as important, and the resources aren't there, and you're like, well, I thought this was. So I think it's really important, Bill, what you're talking about, having a plan, being clear about that, and realizing that if you're in that role, if you're stepping into that leadership role, you've got to lead yourself, at least come up with a plan. I remember having to come up with a sales plan and a kind of a guide for the department I was managing at the time, because it was just so open-ended. They're like, well, what's your sales goal for this year? I'm like, I don't know. I can give you any sales goal I want. What are we aligning? What's the clients? What's the services we're doing? What are we, it wasn't there. And so I was really struggling as a leader and stepping into this role of like, oh, I'm not sure. So I had to do more work on myself. And I didn't, like you, Bill, necessarily knew all the resources at the time, especially outside of the company as a new leader,
Yeah. Knowing the unknown is the hardest part. I think.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, when you're with a company, especially one that doesn't have deep knowledge of itself, a company that's been around for a long time. Oh, we know these are the last 3 years sales project. Sales, the actual sales that we had over the last 3 years. A newer company where they don't have that kind of information. Well, how do you figure that information out? Well, you go and you look at comparable companies. Who's the competition and what are they doing? Which can really help you figure out what your goals should be, and and start figuring out ways to actually achieve those goals, whether they're sales numbers or production numbers of other kinds, and going about that way.
Yeah. So again, just being aware, as the last kind of component I wanted to talk a little bit more about with you guys tonight, is really as we step in this is kind of this idea of balance and well-being, because we talked about maybe trying to do it all and making sure that I'm 50 now, and I've gone through the phase of my kids were younger and I was trying to do all this work and at the expense of, at some point my marriage was struggling and I was dealing with all the kid issues because we're like, oh my goodness, I'm in this role, this leadership role of transition. I've got to do all this. So talk about how we can, as leaders taking these roles, to be mindful. I think it was Bill, whoever said being self-aware, if you will. And I'll start with you, Doxy, first, but understanding like, okay, when you take on a new role, it's important to set healthy boundaries for yourself, setting this up. And Charlie's talked about boundaries in the past, but I'm sure you've seen a Doxy with many business owners where they've this off kilter, and they're speak to that a little bit about balance, well-being, and making sure. And how does that affect your production? Honestly.
Well, I've taken this from my father, who owned his own business and everything, and he told me, look, and you probably heard this before, because so did he. So you just don't take yourself seriously. I'm sorry, because this leadership role, this is going to be short. In a lifespan of your life. It could be 1 year, it could be 3 years. It's not going to be 50 years in that leadership role. You're not going to be the president of the United States for 50 years. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. And maybe that's a good thing that we change every 4 years, or if it's 8. But the point is that don't ever take yourself serious. I know you have to support your family. I know you have to do all of these things, but at the same time, understand it's just a job. It's just a job, and you have to look at it to a point that not only are you trying to make a living for your family, but you're doing it for others as well. And so you have to make sure that when you look at the P&L or the finances each quarter, that you're not going in the red. I mean, it's that simple. But at the same time, again, don't take yourself that serious, because it's not going to last. And that just kind of helps with the stress part of it. For sure. And that's just my opinion.
No, that's I mean, if that is your identity, and I've seen that where their role, their job is their identity, that really is a kind of one-dimensional, if you will, and their self-worth, their self-identity is tied to that position, that title. To your point, Doxy, I think you're in trouble if that is it.
Very much so. I mean, and I get this all the time, gentlemen, and the people that are listening to this. When I walk into a business, and they address me as, Doxy or whatever, but I don't really run with that. And they say, well, I graduated from SC or whatever. I don't really care about those things. And you just hit it, David. Those are just, I did those things, but that isn't who I am.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and sometimes we get into that, I'm now the president of the company. I'm the president. What does that really mean? Now I have certain things I need to, expectations and all of these. No, just be yourself and surround yourself with great people, and you'll be fine.
Yeah. How about you, Bill? What's your thought here on this well-being and identity here?
Well, you really do have to take care of yourself. The stresses of being in charge, if you will, at any level, can easily get to someone. To Doxy's point, your identity is not your position, and you have to remember that. You have family and friends and people who rely on you, but people who make you more than some little part of you that's going to last a couple of years. I love the equation to the equating your position to the president of the United States. Who's going to keep a position for more than 4 years? It's just probably not going to happen. And you'll either get promoted or you'll resign or you'll get fired or something like that. Things happen, and you have to be ready to roll with the punches. You have to relax. It's not going to kill you. I mean, if you don't relax, it might kill you. But
right. That's right.
And it's also a good thing to keep that in mind for the people under you as well. That you need to keep them relaxed and not take things so seriously. Have a nice, relatively, well, maybe not stress-free, because that's I think that's asking too much, but a place where you can deal with the stress, and
right.
Where it's like, oh, this happened, we deal with it, we move on, and having programs in place like retreats or something as small as getting one of those massage chairs for the office. It can be all sorts of different things to help people go with the flow.
Well, as you were saying, Bill, both of you too, in transition, we're talking about people coming into new positions, but I think also transitioning out of a position in a good way. We can talk too much about that, but I think, I've seen people in positions that they should have transitioned out of a long time ago, but they held on to that thing, right?
Yeah.
And they were not very happy people, in my experience. No. They were not a joy to be around. And checking yourself in that, are you serving the company to the best and the highest good, and be real with yourself about, maybe I need to transition. It could be a lateral move. There's nothing wrong with that. Maybe it's just, sometimes there's power in mixing it up. And I think it's important to be, as a leader, consider where we were talking earlier about your strengths, where you can have the most impact. Again, being with a small company for 4.5 years where we helped grow the company, my role kept changing. And I learned, like you said, Doxy, to hold lightly to roles, and more to the point, titles became less important to me as well. Right. What's my title today? Just as we're wrapping up here, I think this is a good pause point.
I had a guest on. Sorry to go.
Go ahead,
I had a guest on. Had a guest on one of my shows a couple weeks back who called himself the president of office plants. So.
Okay. We got lots of office plants here.
Yeah.
So, but we've covered a lot of good topics tonight, from kind of this transition to management, leadership, wellness. there's a lot more we could go in here, and we'll talk. I'm sure power was a great one. I'm excited to come back on that one, you guys. So please, both Doxy and Bill, come back. But as we kind of wrap up here, just last parting thoughts. I'll come to you, Bill, first, and then Doxy. But just last parting thoughts here, as somebody that's facing these transitions, kind of, a lasting bit of advice, insight that you'd want to share, Bill. Like, hey, they're facing this, they're just transitioning, they're, just that considering. What would you say is that kind of key takeaway?
You have to do what's best for. Well, you have to think about yourself first. I mean, I hate to say it that way because I'm definitely a love others kind of guy, but it's not love others before yourself. It's love others as you love yourself. So you have to first know how to treat yourself well, and just to continue on the wellness thing, and then you can figure out what's going to be best for your team and the company at large. So everything starts with you.
Yeah, I love that. It come from a place of wellness, abundance. Like, you're giving, you're right. You're not coming in there taking what can I get from me. It's coming from a place of serving others.
Yeah,
by taking care of yourself first. Yeah, that's an important reminder, Bill. Thank you for that. How about you, Doxy? What are some final thoughts here tonight as we wrap up?
Well, I'm gonna have to tell you again another one of my father's great lines that he told me when I was a kid, and I never understood it until you kind of go through. He told me, it doesn't matter if you win or lose, it's how you play the game. And when he told me that, I never understood it because everybody wants to win. But if you understand that, yeah, everybody wants to win, but you have to lose as well, and you will lose, by the way. And so as I got older, I began, and I was playing sports, and of course in business, I understood what he was actually referring to. He passed away when I was 18, so I didn't get an opportunity to catch more of his wisdom, but I really understood what he was saying, and that is, it's integrity. It's how you play the game, because it's all a game. It really is, and there's winners and losers. But how are you addressing your day to day to actually get the best out of everybody? And it's really how you play it, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, well said, Doxy. You both have just great insights tonight. I really appreciate you guys both coming back on here. I hope you guys all enjoyed the podcast. For those of you that are checking us out for the first time, we welcome your feedback. Comments are always welcome. Of course, reviews. Leave us your review. We'll welcome a great 5-star review on like Apple Podcasts. We're on YouTube as well. Like us and subscribe and all that good stuff. We do appreciate the community that we're creating here. If you'd like to learn more, please leave a message or contact any one of us directly. Simply look us up online. Leave a comment. We're really grateful for you here. Thank you, Bill and Doxy, for being back here. Until next time, have a great night, guys.
Good night.